Before we start this lesson, please make sure to take out this handout. You'll find it in your Spiral 2 notes. We've been talking about compound interest, and in the last lesson I showed you the compound interest formula. And on your next quiz, you're going to need to be able to use that formula to do your calculations on your own. But today I want to show you something called a TVM solver. And this is a way to do all of your compound interest calculations without having to figure out your interest rate per compounding periods and doing all the calculating by hand. So before we get going, I'm going to be using the TVM solver found at this website. So you could type this whole address in, or you could type TVM solver into Google and it should be the first result. So just make sure it says fncalculator.com. That should be the one we want. When you get to that website, you're going to be presented with a table that looks like this. And this is what we're going to use to calculate our different compound interest values. So what is TVM? Well, TVM stands for time value of money. So it represents how the value of your money changes over time. This is just interest. We've seen that over time, the amount of interest keeps growing and growing and growing. So we're going to use this TVM solver to do all of our calculations. So you'll see we have a spot to write the present value, future value, the interest rate, the number of compounding periods, and how often the interest is compounded. Now this space here, payment, we are not going to use that. So in our course, we don't talk about making different payments. That's more if you take the grade 12 course, you would be talking about that there. But we're just sticking with present value, future value, the interest rate, compounding periods, and how often it's being compounded. So let's look at our first example. Let's see how changing the interest rate affects the amount of interest earned. So we're going to do a comparison. Bob invests $1,000 for 5 years. In the first instance, the interest rate is 3% per year and it's compounded annually. In the second instance, it's 6% per year compounded annually. So we're doubling the interest rate and we're going to see what happens with the amount of interest earned. So I've added a little picture here of what you would type into the TVM solver online. Bob invests $1,000. Well, that's our present value. It's 3% interest, so we type that into the box for annual rate. It's 3%. It's compounded annually, so the compounding, we change it to say annually. And it's for 5 years, so that's once a year for 5 years. That's 5 compounding periods. So we type all this in, and then we just click the future value button. And when you do that, it tells you that the future value is $1,159.27. So if you're initially investing $1,000 as your principal, and at the end of the 5 years you have $1,159.27, how much interest was earned? Well, it's just the difference between your future value and your present value, which is $159.27. Now in the second investment, the interest rate is the only thing that's changed. So now instead of 3%, it's 6%. So when you're typing that into the TVM solver, you just have to make sure you're using a 6% interest rate. And again, just click the future value button and it'll get you your answer, which in this case is $1,338.23. And now you can calculate the interest earned. It's $338.23. So if we compare this amount of interest with this amount of interest, we can see that this amount is more than double this. So when you double the interest rate, you more than double the amount of interest earned. So let's do the same exercise, except this time we're keeping the interest rate constant, we're just changing the length of time. So here we're going to compare what happens when you double the length of time. So again, when we go to the TVM solver, this is what we're going to type in. And to calculate our future value, we hit the future value button. So we end up getting $1,159.27, which is $159.27 in interest. Now this time we're going to increase the number of years. So down here, we're doubling the number of compounding periods. So instead of 5, we're going to have 10. And again, you're just going to click the future value button to see what you get. In this case, we get $1,343.92, which is $343.92 of interest. Again, if you compare this amount of interest to this amount of interest, you'll notice it's more than doubled. So when you double the amount of time, you more than double the amount of interest earned. So what about if you change the compounding periods? If you change it from annual compounding to semi-annual or monthly or weekly, how does that affect the amount of interest earned? So you can try this. We're using a present value of $1,000 for 5 years at 3% per year, okay? So you're going to have to keep an eye on the number of compounding periods. For here, it's annual, so that's once a year for 5 years, so there's 5 compounding periods. For this one, it's semi-annual, so that's compounding twice a year for 5 years, so that's going to have 10 compounding periods here. Here it's 12 times a year for 5 years, that's 60 compounding periods. Here it's weekly, that's 52 times a year for 5 years, which is 260 compounding periods. So make sure you plug in the correct numbers and use the TVM solver to get your future value and the amount of interest earned. So when you get your answers, this is what you should be getting. If your numbers are different than this, then you need to let me know so I can figure out what the issue is for you. But let's just take a look here. The more often the compounding happens, the more interest you earn. So this is useful to know if you have a choice between compounding semi-annually versus compounding monthly. You want to go with the monthly option if it's an investment, because then you'll earn more interest. However, if you're thinking about loans, you want to go with the option that gives you a lower amount of interest.